Time. If you've just started listening, we are in conversation with Jarryd Seagal, who is the CEO of No Name Hospitality Group, and we really are talking about how they've built the organization, as it were, to really make sure that they come through with offerings when it comes to restaurants and hotels and bars, etc., that is top tier and that really upholds quality and standard. On that note, Jarryd, let's talk about the city of Cape Town. You know, it's known for its culinary diversity. It's known for, high quality anything really when you want to experience something in the restaurant setting or in bars and hotels, etc. So let's talk about how No Name has been able to, strike a balance, if I could use that term, in terms of international trends, but also local spaces, local flavors, as it were.
So I suppose, my business partner and I started the business about 10 or 11 years ago. And obviously, historically, Cape Town and South Africa in general has always had a plethora of incredible fine dining establishments. I think we've seen a shift in a movement globally, locally and abroad towards more approachable casual dining establishments. And I think that's where the city has really flourished in the last 10 years. When I say casual, I don't necessarily mean casual in terms of quality of like execution and delivery of product. I suppose in terms of how you approach it. We need to remember that Cape Town is still a beachside city and a holiday destination, and
Mm-hmm.
most people don't want to cruise around in a suit. They'd rather be in their I suppose their board shorts and a t-shirt, and
Right.
be able to have a high quality dining experience in a casual environment, and something that's akin to the quality that you would expect in one of our fine dining establishments, but is, as I said, much more approachable and appeals to a much broader marketplace, and is obviously more accessible from a pricing perspective, but still delivers on those quality markers or indicators. My business partner and I spent a long time overseas, in Australia, which is one of the, I suppose, world leaders, or was one of the world leaders at the time in the casual dining space. So we were able and fortunate to draw like a lot of inspiration from quite a developed marketplace in that subsect of the food and beverage marketplace. They were sort of, I suppose, the innovators of this casual, like all day dining culture or brunch culture. And that's sort of how we springboarded our businesses initially, as we opened with something that felt or came from a very similar marketplace, because I think Sydney and Cape Town are very similar coastal cities, and we were able to scale something back or deliver something that we felt would be very well received by the local marketplace at the time.
Mm.
And then obviously since then, there's been, as I said, so much growth in the space, so many innovators. South Africans in general are super innovative, are very forward thinking, are very resilient. They have great ideas. And because of that, and because Cape Town has now, I suppose, this global appeal and this cosmopolitan feeling to it, it's inevitable that, a variety of establishments would pop up that are inspired by the global food scene. And what happened since then is it's now become this melting pot of local and international cultures, and that can be, as I said, seen and reflected in what the local marketplace looks like and the food scene looks like, as you said. Um, so we now, I suppose, draw inspiration from global concepts or global brands that we feel are suitable the nature of the city. And I suppose South Africanize them in a certain extent, because obviously not every city is the same. Cape Town is a very outdoorsy, active, like lifestyle orientated city. I don't necessarily think, maybe the bigger fast food concepts and things like that work as well here. I also don't think like a lot of the mass market brands work as well here as they would in, say, for example, a city that has like critical mass like London and New York. Cape Townians like to feel that things are design orientated, that are sort of
Mm.
catered to them specifically, and that feel uniquely Cape Townian while having that worldly influence and flair. And I think that has been sort of, one of the leading goals for us to try and achieve, to make it feel like it was created and curated locally, but I suppose overlaid with an experience that you might only, have when you go traveling.
Wow. Amazing, amazing everything. Okay, let's talk about, just follow up on your experiences and your travels and how you incorporate that into the local space in Cape Town as we see it right now. Um, Talk to us about the new concepts, the new trends that are most exciting right now, and what you're exploring next. Because I would imagine that as you try and build what I call a since business, because that's what everybody wants, right? Since 1982, since 1992, or I mean, in your case, it's of course since what, 2015 or so. Um,
Yes.
yeah, let's talk about the group's identity and what you're going to be exploring next.
So I think circling back to the first question that you had, that's, I suppose, the essence or the crux of why we're trying to build, multiple brands out under this umbrella, is that, we have the opportunity to build unique standalone brands that are, or we would like to say, are the mark of quality in their like sort of subsect of the industry. So it's like, if we're going to build a breakfast lunch cafe, we'd rather build from the beginning with the aspiration of making it almost like an institution, it becomes
Mm,
the preeminent breakfast lunch cafe. If we're going to do the same thing in whatever cuisine that might be Italian, it might be Greek, it might be a bar. We don't necessarily want to replicate these things over and over again where we dilute I suppose, the brand perception and the quality of that brand. We would much rather focus on making one thing really, really good and the best that it can possibly be in that subcategory. So that's how we're sort of approaching things. How we approach what we're doing next and which concepts are coming up next, I
mm,
suppose, is very much based, and this is going to sound quite weird, not necessarily on like market trends and analysis, although there is some of that. It's based on like what we feel like we could be the most passionate about in delivering, things that feel close to our heart, things that feel like they might be a little bit lacking, obviously in the local marketplace, but or where we feel we can innovate even marginally, and or put our like sort of spin or flair on whatever it is that concept might be. Now, it's
mm,
very hard to go out and reinvent the wheel. Our goal isn't always necessarily to do that. And like you said, you're an artist, so you'll understand this. Everything in this space, I suppose, is an artistic interpretation of what you feel that concept could be. So, and obviously, it's a very subjective space. So, what's good to you isn't good to me, and vice versa. But we like to go. We really love the notion of opening a really cool brunch spot. Okay, amazing. That's step one. Now, how do we make that feel as good as it possibly can to us and the local marketplace? And I suppose that's how we move forward in terms of identifying new concepts. We, as I said, we also have a balanced approach with market analysis and,
right.
seeing Cape Town rising as a global city and someone that's visited as now an iconic global destination. Lots of people doing events and hosting events here, whether they're weddings or festivals or outdoor events. I suppose that's been our next big push. We are obviously continually exploring, accommodation spaces and restaurants and things that are closer to our sort of bread and butter or core business. But the next few years should see us open our first wedding venue, hopefully our first outdoor music or events venue, and a few spaces in that, I suppose, subsect of the hospitality industry. So, yeah.
Very exciting. Oh my goodness. The future of hospitality is definitely not only holistic, but it's also very creative. Jarryd, I could speak to you all day because I really love how you think. Thank you so much for the time, and all the best, I guess, for those that want to find out about your hospitality group, the work that you are doing, the specialties in restaurant conceptualization, menu development, all of that. NoNameHG.com is where we should go, correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome stuff. Thank you very much. Jarryd Seagal, Chief Executive Officer of No Name Hospitality Group. What a wonderful conversation. Okay, let's cross to sports, find out what the latest is.
Sports on Channel